Hey everyone, and welcome to the June edition of 3030. I am your host, Pat Reinhardt of Conductor, and as always, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with me. We have a bunch to cover today, but what is it? So, a lot happened over the last 30 days. We're going to talk about Google's algorithm and all the tremors that we've been seeing. We're going to talk about Google pulling back on AI overviews over not a great launch. We'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, we're going to talk about the Google data leak. I have gotten 3,000 questions about this on my thoughts about it. I did go through a lot of it, but we'll walk through that and what I think. And then ultimately, what we're going to end with is there are a lot of people and companies out there trying to sell you services around AI overviews and data for AI overviews. And we're going to talk about that for, to close out the day. But let's get into it. As always, we only have 30 minutes. Number one, man, Google has been choppy lately. If anyone has been watching, I'm sure you have seen this, especially in your sites and your rankings. It's been very, very volatile, right? Google, as you can see here, we saw big spikes on May 22nd, May 27th, and then June 1st, 4th, 5th, 8th, and the 12th. So needless to say that Google is sending a lot of tremors, a lot of choppiness out there. And today they actually launched another spam update. So the June 2024 spam update is now currently rolling out. So we will more than likely see even more choppiness because of that. And that's just something that we all have to get used to, right? This is nothing out of the normal for our conversations. I typically start off with the volatility that we've been seeing. We know that there's a high level of it, but again, the question is, what am I seeing and kind of seeing in our data and hearing around the industry, right? Number one is that retail has been the most volatile vertical, which is now the new normal, in my opinion. And I was actually on LinkedIn before, and I can't remember who posted it. That's my fault. I'll credit him later. Someone had posted that now is a great time. Might have been Cyrus Shepard actually. Said that like now is a great time to be an SEO in e-commerce, and I agree because I think Google is actually, even though it's very volatile and it's changing super quickly, we have all the different features that are and featured snippets, all the different paid PLAs, organic PLAs. You have the filters that pop up on the left now. It's been interesting to see because what I'm seeing is smaller retailers are getting a fair shake here. That's what I'm seeing, right? They're seeing better gains year over year versus larger retail sites. And that's something that we'll get to in a minute. But ultimately, I agree, and it was Cyrus, I believe, but I do agree with that I think it's really interesting to see, how this is shaking out. But again, like where I've had the most trouble and where I've reported that people have had the most trouble is in e-commerce. But it's interesting when you look year over year, some websites that are on the smaller side seem to be doing, getting a more fair shake against the big box retailers. We'll show some data around that in just a minute here. The other thing, you do not want to be an aggregator site right now, especially in finance. Right now, this has been something I track a couple of large aggregators. And they are not having a good time, through all of this. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. A lot of these big aggregator sites that had previously, brought in, tons and tons of traffic and just kept growing and growing, and we're pushing down all these other, just speaking in the financial vertical, like other, banking institutions and smaller lenders, not seeing that anymore. Aggregators are not having a good time again, especially in the finance vertical. But really, as a whole, when you look at like a lot of different verticals, aggregators are not performing as well as they have been. Next thing is that big health sites got even bigger. WebMD, Healthline, et cetera. These sites are continuing to see massive growth, through all the changes, which again is not surprising. And when AI overviews does get figured out, because it's certainly not going anywhere, I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see this. We're going to see these big health sites that are very trusted sources start to pop up in AI overviews even more, and they're probably going to get even more traffic through that. Because again, Google says that engagement in AI overviews is better than the traditional SERPs, even though they refuse to share any data with us that actually confirms that. Either way, not going to talk about that too much. Next, Reddit continues its asinine rise. Watching Reddit continue to rise, although it does seem to have plateaued a little bit. Between April, May, and June, I think that Reddit has actually started to show up 1% less. I saw a study that someone had done on LinkedIn earlier in the week. So I think from that perspective, that's something that, again, when we talked about Reddit a couple of months ago, one of the things I said is that it reminded me very much of when Google got access to Twitter's fire hose. And so from that perspective, we saw a Twitter feed and carousel pretty much for everything that you Googled. The same thing was happening with Reddit, and I think you're going to start to see Google pull back on Reddit a little bit. Not so much that it's not going to be there anymore. It's certainly going to be a presence, but I don't know if we can see it rise anymore. But we certainly did see it rise through that. But moving on, let's get into some data because that's a lot of Tremors, everyone. Kevin Bacon jokes, that's what we do here on the show. So number one, let's look at a large retailer right here, right? Okay, so you're looking here that, between April and June, this large retailer has actually seen an 8% decrease in top 10 visibility over the course of that 3-month period. But when you look year over year, so you look at May versus June or June versus June, you're actually seeing a 14% decrease overall in page one visibility year over year. So from that perspective, that is something that I'm seeing a lot of, that these big box retailers are doing worse than say some smaller retailers. So here's a much smaller retailer. I would call it, again, you're talking, the difference in size here is astronomical. But when you look on the average, that small retailers have, this small retailer saw a 5% decrease in top 10 visibility over the last 90 days. But when you look year over year, it's seen a 70% increase in top 10 visibility year over year. So that's a trend that I'm seeing all over the place, that, these big box retailers are having a hard time. I work with a bunch of sites right now that are having a hard time, that are retailers that are on the larger side. But it's really interesting. I talk to companies of all shapes and sizes in a given month. But some of the folks that I've been working with that are on the smaller side, like small and medium side, their sites have been going gangbusters, over the last, I would say over the last 6 months. And year over year, most of these sites are up. I mean, some of them are up over 100% in traffic, up 30, 40, 50% in traffic, up 70, 80, 90% in page one visibility. So while I am not happy about Reddit's insane rise, I am happy that smaller companies are getting more visibility here, especially when their sites are run well. So from that perspective, that is that's something that I've been seeing a lot. This is just one example of this. You can look at a lot of these big box retailers and look at a smaller version of that, a smaller company that sells a similar set, and I'll guarantee you that the smaller site most of the time is doing better year over year on a percentage basis than the large manufacturers, which is really interesting. Here's a question here. Did you check to see if these smaller retailers who saw lift were utilizing Google's manufacturer API? I did not. That's actually a very good call out, Catherine. So no, I did not look into that. I'm looking at pure visibility here across Google's, across Conductor's data set. But ultimately, that is, ultimately that's the trend that I'm seeing there, which is really, really interesting. So let's go into the aggregator conversation. I've been tracking, just kind of paying attention to a bunch of different aggregators, but I typically show them in the financial sector because this is where I've seen the largest drop off. As you can see here, this is a very, very large, financial aggregator that just got absolutely hammered by the helpful content update last September. So what they've been seeing here in the last 90 days, they saw another 22% decrease, but in top 10 visibility over the last 90 days, but they have seen a 53% year over year. So half of their page one or top 10 visibility rather is gone. And that is something that does not look like, a couple of months ago, I actually reported that, they looked like that they were starting to head back in April. They started to look like they had plateaued and were heading back up and to the right. Nope. May came around and it just did not treat them well. And June's looking even worse. So this is something that we are, so that is something that would be, something to look at. And an example of this would be a site like NerdWallet or like Credit Karma or things of that nature that are aggregating different deals, for different credit cards and things like that. They build their own content and things of that nature, but they're not the actual financial institution. Here's another financial aggregator, that has similar woes, that had a 10% decrease in top 10 visibility over the course of the past 90 days, and then a 29% decrease year over year. Again, same exact situation that they got smacked by the September helpful content update. Then heading into April, it looked like they had finally hit a plateau because, February, March, April were pretty much the same, but nope. May came, smacked in the face, and then June is looking even worse. So I am predicting that these sites are going to have a hard time moving forward because this has been a trend for about 8 or 9 months now of just constant every time Google puts something out, and now we have this June spam update, which I don't know much about yet because it just started rolling out. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, sites like this have further trouble through this. And it's really interesting because sites like this are powerhouses in these industries. Like a site like NerdWallet, for example, is it's a very frequented site, very well known site, very trusted site. So it's really interesting to see sites like this do worse through all of these updates because a lot of them have a lot of valuable content on those sites. But I think it's the nature of their site and the nature of their business that isn't jiving with Google right now. So it's something to keep in mind moving forward, that especially if you're in the financial vertical, you might not have to compete with guys like this as much as you needed to. It's not that they're not going away. They still have a ton of visibility, obviously. But from that standpoint, when you look at this going from at their peak in September, they had almost 1.5 million keywords in the top 10. And now they have probably like 750,000. Like that's a huge drop off, right? That's a huge drop off in visibility for these guys. So moving on to the health sector, that I was looking at. This is WebMD, and you can see that this big health site just got better, right? Just got bigger. So they're seeing a 12% increase between April and June. And then they saw a 35% increase year over year in top 10 visibility. So big health sites are just getting bigger. Here's another one, healthline.com, that saw a 14% increase in top 10 visibility in the past 90 days and a 34% increase year over year. So again, Google is, especially for YMYL terms or your money or your life, type terms, they are turning to the big trusted sites, which they have pretty much said that they were going to do. Question here, are you seeing similar in insurance aggregators? Yes, I am. So again, these sites that are aggregating content, or the nature of their sites, is aggregation, are having a harder time because Google seems to be starting to show the actual lender more often than the aggregator that's just trying to get you to the lender, which, in my opinion, makes sense. I think that makes sense, but it's bad news. It's bad news for them. So that's what's going on. From a health perspective, again, Google is going to continue to show these big trusted health sites for all this stuff. And that's something that should not be surprising to anybody, right? Like seeing that we're going to see more Mayo Clinic, we're going to see more WebMD, we're going to see more Healthline. That's not surprising, especially for some of the terms that they're going to be watched for. And then last but certainly not least, Reddit continues its absolute clown shoes, rise in top 10 visibility with another 10% increase between April and June. And over the last 90 days, and then we are now up to a 358% increase year over year in top 10 visibility in a 12-month period, which is just asinine. So again, it looks like they have started to plateau a little bit. There's a lot of chatter out there in the industry on the forums, that I frequent, about people saying that they just feel like they're seeing Reddit less often. Anyone out there have the same experience? Are you seeing Reddit less often? I feel like I see it a little less often, but it's still pretty prominent. But ultimately, they did continue to grow through May, and pretty significantly, by the way. If you see the top three, which is the dark green, that has grown significantly, really from February to today. So that's something that, to keep in mind, that even though it might feel like Reddit is showing up less, they have gained more visibility. And like I said, for me, I have felt that I do not see Reddit as much as I did like 60 days ago. but it's still very prevalent and it's still very there, but it does feel like it's less. And I can see in the chat, sounds like that. It sounds like that is the general feeling, that feels like we're seeing we're seeing them less. And yes, to answer your question, Google did partner up with Reddit for I believe it was a 4 or 5 year agreement, something like that. That they could power each other. Reddit would train Gemini. We covered that on an episode a couple of months ago. But moving on. How are we doing on time? Doing good. Let's talk about Google pulling back on AI overviews. So, as everyone knows by now, again, I can't fathom that no one here, doesn't know this, but, when Google rolled out AI overviews, there were several hallucinations that, many people were posting, mainly Lily Ray, was posting all of the incorrect answers, all the stuff that, Gemini was producing. And it was really bad. The backlash was really bad. And ultimately, Google's head of search, came out. Liz Reed actually responded to this and said, which you can read. Again, everyone who comes to it gets the deck. So I implore you to go and actually read the documents that are linked here. But ultimately came out and said, listen, it's like, we understand that, there's, it's a new thing. It came out. We tested it extensively, yada, yada, yada. The hallucinations were happening on a very small, small amount of queries. And, we're testing, but we are going to pull, we are pulling it back, and, it's not going to show as often. And as we get it more right, and as the model learns more, you'll start to see it more, yada, yada, yada. And, so that's what happened, is that the rollout did not go great. And if you actually go to Google's forums, it's flooded not only with examples of the hallucinations, but also people asking to turn it off. We've talked about this before, that I believe that Google may feel some pressure to allow people to not, to turn AI overviews off. I don't think they'll give into it, but ultimately that's something that, that's something that's left to be seen. Right now, the big question that I've been getting is, how often are these things really showing? And again, there are people out there that have done some small scale tests. Again, like, something very important, to note, which we'll get into, we'll explain even more later, is that you cannot crawl logged in SERPs at scale, right? So all of these tests that people are doing, it's more than likely people Googling things by hand and doing the analysis based on how often they're seeing it pop up when they're logged in. But you cannot send a scraper in, while you're logged in and go scrape SERPs, because you will get blacklisted and banned. It's just not possible, and it's also illegal, because technically it's personalized, so you're actually not allowed to do that. So all these tests you see are very surface level. But with that said, people are still taking time to do it. And I would say, when, which, again, it said it was showing up when it launched around 18% of the time is one of the tests I looked, and now it's down to 3% of the time. So it's really not showing that much either way. But then there was another study that another company did that was as high as 30% at its height, but now it's down to about 10%. So again, the same scale. It doesn't, the percentages it's singular, so it's not a big deal. But when you think about it, right now AI overviews is showing for a very small part of the population, a very small part of the population. It's going to continue to show to a very small part of the population until Google really figures this out, and then ultimately either makes they have to figure out the ad model so that it pays for itself, because again, the compute costs of this, which we have talked about a lot, is very expensive. So you have to take that into account. And I think from that perspective, that's something that we are, we're just going to have to. This is a wait and see type thing. But don't get me wrong. What Liz Reed also did say, AI overviews is not going anywhere. This is here to stay. This will grow. So everything that we've talked about, especially last month when I went through the 6 things I think everyone should be doing. If you didn't see that one, go back and watch the episode. That these are here to stay, and we have to, we will be living with these. So we have to be prepared and continue for a world where this is showing to a large portion of the population, which is coming. And for anyone who has not seen any of the hallucinations, I believe this is the most famous one, where someone had asked, had said to, hey, how was about adding glue to pizza to stiffen the cheese. This was one of the most famous ones that was out there. So something to keep in mind is that, Google, this thing is still learning. This model is still learning. It's not perfect. Google has acknowledged it's not perfect, but they also acknowledge that it is not going anywhere. So we have to be prepared to live with this. All right, let's spend some time on the Google data leak. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure everyone does. Google, there was a data leak. Rand Fishkin received a document from someone that used to work at Google, or someone, who knows. They apparently know who it is now, but it doesn't really matter. But on May 27th, which is Memorial Day here in the United States, for anyone here joining us across the seas, we found out that there had been a leak, which was an internal API document from 2019 that contained over 14,000 search features for Google's algorithm and how it works. So obviously this is like, whoa, everyone's like, holy crap. It's like, wow, this is the Yandex leak happened to Google. And ultimately, the question comes down to, what did we find out from it? One thing that I will start with is that, in short, we discovered absolutely nothing that we didn't already know or suspect, right? Or that would or should make us change anything about our strategies, right? Every single person that went through it and went through and did an in-depth analysis, came back to the same conclusion, which is Google's advice, which is create good content for users and not search engines, which is like, yeah, we know that, right? But just want to preface this, that there was nothing groundbreaking to me in this, and also you got to take all this with a grain of salt, considering how old this document was. This document referenced Google Plus multiple times. So again, this is an older document, but while with that, of course, everyone's curiosity peaks. Like, what did we find out, right? Like, what was here? So, okay, again, I don't think that we found out anything we didn't know, or that Google has vaguely, kind of told us about in the past. But ultimately, here are the ones that I think are worth the debate. Google clearly uses clicks for rankings, given the existence of the Nav Boost and Blue ranking systems. So, they, basically, people clicking into your site and all that, like the amount of click-through data that people are, Google uses that data to see, and definitely, calculates it into how your site ranks. This is something they have said that they do not do for many years, very vaguely. But Rand proved years ago that they did this, and everyone knows that they did it. But again, the Google guys come out and they have to be vague, because the minute that you start to say one thing attributes to ranking, everyone starts to spam it or look for ways to spam it. But I think that we can close the book on this one, that clicks are 100% calculated into rankings, but we kind of already knew that, right? That's not groundbreaking. It's worth a good debate. I had a great debate with my old boss Stefan the other day about it. But at the end of the day, I am, this is just further, convincing me that Google does indeed use clicks, for rankings, because of the existence of the Nav Boost and the Blue ranking systems. The next one is one that I have been, I get argued with about all the time, which is that Google 100% associates authors with documents, and stores that so that they understand the breadth of contribution in their index. This is something I talk about all the time. A lot of you come every single month and you hear me talk about this. Authorship is really important. And I've always said that my theory is that Google associates people with the documents that they're attached to, and that's why you should create author pages. That's why you should link out to other documents and link out to other ways to help people and Google credentialize these users. And to me, that was one of the points that that really stuck out to me, because that's something that I've been kind of clamoring about for a long time. So that kind of convinced that hopefully convinced everyone that is a real thing. They definitely do a lot to detect artificial link building. We knew this. This is what the spam brain system that they put out. They're looking for people that are trying to artificially build up links and build up their sites. That's not surprising. But ultimately, they have a lot of there was a lot of data to support that they have a lot of systems in place to predict if you are buying links and if you're a link farm. Title tags are still important. Google matches them to the user's query. This is something that probably I debate about this multiple times a year when people tell me that title tags are not important. It's very easy to prove that if you go to a page that is not optimized and you only change the title tag and you put a keyword into it, you will see that page rise in ranking for that keyword. I'm not saying it's going to go to number one, but Google clearly matches this. This is something that people told me is not true for many years. This to me just further proves that this is very real and that the title tag is still a very important element on a page. Google likes fresh content. So there was a score in there to see how often pages are updated, how often new content is created. So that's something that I think is. And the last but not least is that there's clearly a sandbox that Google uses for new sites, meaning that Google puts new sites when they first index them into a sandbox, and there's a certain gestation period that they have to go through before they're going to really start ranking. So that's how they check if they're spammy. That there's a lot of checks that they do. And again, this is something that Rand Fishkin proved many, many years ago, and a lot of people gave him a lot of flack for it. He proved this many, many years ago, and it's 100. And if you go through the documents and you take them for what they are, it's 100% there, and it's 100% true. So that was a very small, short breakdown of what I felt were the most important points. But if you want to read the best breakdown of this, go to iPullRank's website and read Mike King's, analysis of it. Mike is a very smart guy, and he did a great breakdown. I've read through it multiple times. It's a long document, so give yourself time. It's going to take you time to get through. And it took Mike, I think he said he spent like all Memorial Day weekend going through it. But if you want to read through it, if you want to read through the definitive one, go to iPullRank's website and read through Mike's analysis. It's done very good. And again, my final thoughts on this is that this is an internal API from 2019. Google Plus is mentioned a lot. This shouldn't change the way that you do anything. This shouldn't change the way anyone does anything because it's not definitive. It's a document that was leaked. Is it real? Yes, it's 100% real. Is all of it, true? Probably. Most of it's probably true, or it's at least a version of something that was true and has now evolved into a different version of that. But again, everything in here, nothing was surprising. It's all stuff that we knew. It's all stuff that we knew that the Google guys had to dodge and skirt when we asked the questions. So to me, just keep doing what you're doing because that's the advice that everyone, including Mike, kind of came down to was create great content. Like not going to beat a dead horse here, but that's really what it all comes down to. And then last but not least, one thing this is a PSA. I am seeing a lot of companies out there saying that they are selling services to show you AI overview data. And I just want to throw this out there that it is, again, I know I said this before, they are claiming that they are scraping and reporting on AI overviews, which means that they are claiming that they're scraping when logged in, not anonymous SERPs. You can scrape anonymous SERPs. You cannot scrape logged in SERPs. You will get banned. You will get blacklisted. So number one, this is a lie. However, whatever they're saying, if someone says, "Oh, my technology is scraping this and pulling this data in," there's literally no way. You also have to be wary that they're all saying, well, it'll be for like 50 keywords. It's always a small set of keywords that they're doing. The reason for this is that more than likely they are hiring people to do manual Google searches for a set of lists while they're logged into their Gmail accounts and literally copying and putting a number in a spreadsheet that is then uploaded into a platform. Our CPO actually got a message from a company who I will not name that is claiming that they do this and was offering to hire her and to give her a 30 to 60 minute training to help them do this. So everyone just be very wary of this. Is that like anything that's done with AI overview data, it's very surface level because more than likely people are doing it manually, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's not a scaled solution. It's not all the data. No one really knows how often all this stuff is showing up. It's all anecdotal at this point. But from that perspective, just keep that in mind. If someone is pitching you and saying like, hey, like we can track these keywords, and we will, and it's in the platform, and it's part of the platform, it is more than likely a human being manually Googling something while they're in Gmail, while they're logged into their Gmail, and then putting it into a spreadsheet that is then being uploaded into that platform. So be very wary. The snake oil salesmen are out there in full force right now. It's a scare tactic. You do not need this. We will get tracking of this at some point. It's not even baked yet, and it's not even impacting anyone's sites like in a huge way yet. So that's my advice to you. Of course, you can do whatever you want, but just be very, very wary of anyone trying to sell you like a scaled AI overview solution, because it just doesn't exist right now, because it's not possible, because it's illegal to scrape logged in SERP data, because it's PII. So with that said, everybody, we talked a lot about algorithms today, but remember, the only algorithm that matters is the heart, mind, and soul of your customer. You create great content that they like and love, they'll come back and be customers for life. As always, we do office hours the Tuesday after the live episode. Come join me in Madison on Tuesday, June 25th. We'll be there at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can lob questions at me, and I will do my best to answer them. And with that, everybody, thank you so much once again for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with me. I know I say this every month, but this is my favorite part of my job, and I wouldn't be able to do without all of y'all. Happy birthday to my son Jameson and some other old guy who lives in my house. Don't worry about it. But ultimately, everybody, thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next month.